Welcome back to another Rational Alchemy. Today we are going to talk about a very serious topic, Russia and Ukraine. And I'm very pleased to say I'm joined at the table by Rex Laceby. Rex, welcome back.
Thank you, Nigel. It's a pleasure to be back. I missed you.
Missed you as well. You have provided so much information here. Why don't you give us a brief summary of the bad player that Russia really is?
Thank you for asking me. I know in our last talk I'd mentioned that I studied European history at the University of Wisconsin and the University of Colorado Boulder. And I've been following Russia very closely, especially in the last couple of weeks. And unfortunately, what we're seeing now is Putin's playbook. And ever since he became elected president in 2000, it just shows that this man will do nothing but try to reestablish what I would consider the old USSR. I actually took some notes, some copious notes. I'm not an expert in Russia. I'm just doing this because I wanted to be able to share some guidance, some of the things I've learned out of my own studies at the universities, watching the news, and specifically what Russia has been doing in the last 10 to 15 years when it comes to cyber terrorism and the attacks have actually done on the United States.
I think we're going to astonish a few people on exactly what has happened in world history that they were unaware of.
Well, one of the first dates I want to bring up is February 2005. And we know through history that Iran has been an aggressor towards the United States. Ever since the storming of the embassy and the Iranian hostage crisis, it's evident that Iran and the United States will never be friends. But in the meantime, you've got very significant adversaries of ourselves, politically, geopolitics involved. And in 2005, Moscow and Tehran signed a treaty, regardless of what the rest of the world was putting on Tehran, that Russia would take their expelled fuel rods. And so these are the same fuel rods that they're using to enrich uranium to make it weapons grade. So that was one of the first times that the nuclear threat of Iran became connected specifically with Russia. And then just a few years down the road, what I would consider the first cyber war happened in 2007. It was April 2007, and a Russian statue in Estonia was removed. Instantly, the Estonian government entire network was taken down. And when their own cybersecurity personnel within Estonia, they thought it was just normal attacks or cyber, small attacks. There's different protocols that every country has. And Estonia became one of the first former Russian bloc countries to openly engage in the internet. But it became their downfall. So one of their centers of gravity became their critical vulnerability. And it wasn't until the cybersecurity managers in Estonia shut down all traffic coming from outside the country, and they were able to build back their system, and experts have all pointed that these attacks came directly from Moscow. That was the first time that experts have shown that Russia was using cyber warfare, a new term at the time, to go and actually attack another country. But it couldn't be proven. And just a couple years down the road, the country of Georgia was actually attacked, very similar to what's going on in Ukraine right now. And lo and behold, you've got two separate regions in South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Now are both recognized by Russia as independent states, and Putin was saying that there's separatists and they're being persecuted and they wanted their independence from Georgia. The exact same day that Russian tanks rolled into Georgia, their network was taken down. Very significant cyber attack, took out all lines of communication, and again, the international community that studies cyber warfare, including the United States, are all saying it was coming from Russia. Same time zone, finding Russian verbiage in the code, and it was very similar to the Estonian attack. So now we're looking at 2014 in Crimea. Crimea used to be part of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Now it's part of Russia. Russia comes in and takes it over. And what they were doing in Georgia, what they were trying to do in Estonia, and now luckily a lot of the Baltic states have become NATO countries,
Yep.
is Russia wants to keep this quasi-war, just build up issues that prevent countries like Ukraine from actually becoming part of the EU or part of NATO. And just by doing that, it creates a buffer between Russia and the NATO alliance. And poor Ukraine, who's had its own civil war, it's had to deal with Hitler, it's had to deal with Stalin, now it has to deal with Putin. The poor Ukrainian people are the one that suffer. Ever back to World War I, they would kill them off with bread riots, and just taking the grain in Ukraine and keeping it from the people. And that's what has always happened to the Ukrainian folks. So, now we're looking at, modern day, and I had some other information about, Putin and his backing of North Korea and continuing to expand, control the area. I'm no Russian expert again, but it sounds like Putin wants to reestablish the old USSR.
Did he really think he was going to get away with this? And the West say nothing?
I saw this coming. My focus on learning more about Russia and the GRU, which is the military intelligence part of Russia, is that an organization called Sandworm. It took out the Ukrainian power grid in December 23rd, 2015. And 3 U.S. SANS researchers, Tim Conway, Mike Asante, and Rob Lee, they were actually part of the international organization that determined that these cyber attacks that took down the Ukrainian power grid on one of the coldest nights of the year, left 250,000 people without power, just showed the capabilities of Russia. And from what I've read, it sounds like Russia is using Ukraine as its test pigeon, as its, how to conduct cyber operations. Everything from actually controlling industrial control systems, which they did in Ukraine, or just taking intellectual property, or Fancy Bear hacking into the DNC. I heard about cybercrime, cyber terrorism, cyber attacks on Ukraine about the same time he's building up all these forces on the Ukrainian border. And I was waiting for the power to go out. I do like telling people about how these 2 power grids were taken down. And the power grid, the power station that was closest to Kyiv, they used a rogue computer in the network. And they launched this malicious a malware called Black Energy. It corrupted the firmware. It took over the industrial control systems. It took out the ability for the backup lights to come out. And then with a software called Kill Disk, wiped every single thing on the entire network. The delegation that flew in, Department of Energy, some of the gentlemen I was telling you about, the FBI, actually came in trying to help the country of Ukraine, because they're saying these attacks are probably coming from Russia, because we actually found Russian in the code. So they went to, the next day, the delegation goes to the Western Power Station. And that power station, that was taken over not by a rogue computer, but by hijacking the IT help desk. So picture this room, and I'm someone in IT, and all the lights are going out, thousands and thousands of just homes without power. And on their screen, a 51-second video off of iPhone was filmed by the supervisor, and he went by screen, and the controller had no access to the mouse. They couldn't shut anything off. They were trying to cut computers off, but it didn't matter because it was in the system. But they'd watch the screen, the little mouse, a ghost mouse would toggle off power, toggle off industrial control system, one by one. That attack also added an added bonus that the Russians wanted to use just to show the world how good they were. And it bombarded the help desk with erroneous calls and DDoS attacks, which made it irrelevant. These are the types of attacks that Putin has put on the world. And just like happened in Georgia, you've got a very sophisticated cyber attack. Luckily, Ukraine has been much better with support of folks like the United States, with folks from SANS teaching internationally. it's so imperative that we give all of our allies the tools, because Russia represents an advanced, persistent threat that is continually attacking not just countries like Ukraine, but NATO and the United States.
I've worked with a number of Russians in the past through work. In fact, we bought out a Russian company when I was there, and a number of them came over to the US. They are brilliant programmers. I've seen what they're capable of. And it's such a shame that these people don't put their skills to good. Here's my question, though, and going back to the power stations. If they're that good at cyber hacking, which they obviously are, why the hell did they bomb?
The statistics I've seen, Russia is the second largest military in the world. Okay, that's number one. But they have not been, other than some small engagements, saying that they're taking out ISIS targets, but pretty much taking out rebels, who are back in Assad and Syria. They haven't been a protracted 20-year war like the United States has. And I've seen a lot of videos, a lot of failed logistic operations, things that were right out of Napoleon Hitler's playbook, that logistics should drive operations. And yet, very close to its border, I've seen Russian tanks on eBay.
Right.
Because their supply system is not ready. They've just never been in the war. The United States has. And we understand through 20 years of pain and suffering, some things that the Russians just weren't. The Ghost of Kiev got 7 hits. This retired colonel has 7, an ace pilot, an inspiration to any. It reminded me of the Battle of Britain, and how those British pilots and some Americans were there every night fending off the bombers.
That's right.
Let's
not forget the Canadians and the Australians.
All of them, yes. All of our tea-drinking friends in that fight. But Russia is just, they're just not as proficient at what we're doing. And they bombed something that their military intelligence considered it a threat, but we could have had another Chernobyl incident.
It could have been worse.
It could have been extremely worse. And you had, just 31 confirmed deaths from Chernobyl back, I think it was 1986. But, countless animals, and almost every tree from Chernobyl to Belarus. The pine trees are all dead. The soil gone. And for the Russians to be this enabled to use military intelligence, and the fire brigade, which the Russians call them, they didn't want to get bombed. The bombing was still going on, and everyone's thinking we're going to probably have another meltdown. And so that's one more thing that Putin just didn't have planned. How well the international community bound together.
Right.
And the sad thing, the more scary thing is, it's not going to be an easy victory for him. Now he's back in the corner. What does he do?
Yes.
I'm hoping that the oligarchs who we're targeting right now financially, up to the sum of, I've heard, hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe it'd be a good time for them to step in. Someone be the hero. Someone be the hero. Remove this potential threat for a potential world war, mutual assured destruction. And just even talking about raising his nuclear deterrence, that's like, who talks about that?
I know.
Like, really, we're just going to start throwing nukes at each other? And it's all the really bad movies that I had to grow up with in the 80s. So the Russia, it's a hard thing. And I just got you some facts about, since 2000, how Putin has become more of a threat. And it's scary because, he puts himself in this, he's almost like the next Hitler or Stalin.
Yes.
And I'm very impressed with the international community. Zelensky, if he doesn't get Man of the Year, then time just needs to go away.
Oh, you're not kidying.
And just
he needs Man of the Century.
Man of the Century, Jewish descent. I heard 2 of his grandfathers died in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And for him to sit there with his troops, telling the United States, hey, I don't need medevac out, I need ammo.
Yeah.
And and I saw the opening ceremony for the Special Olympics. And I don't know if you saw the gentleman in the little wheelchair with this huge Ukrainian flag, and everyone just went, and Russia wasn't invited. And for FIFA to not let them, I'm just so impressed. And that's that's what we need to do now. We need to do that not just internationally, but the United States.
Yeah.
Let's end the eternal divisiveness, and
Right.
let's just actually take care of what we have,
I mean,
and the blessings we have here.
In the UK, the government is talking about literally taking anything owned by a Russian. And they own, I've forgotten how many millions and millions of pounds worth of property they own in London, especially the Mayfair area.
Now that's why Hitler didn't invade Switzerland, Swiss bank.
Swiss bank.
I've been to Switzerland a couple times. They have no outward defenses, no outward, no. The Germans were more worried about people coming in from Switzerland.
Absolutely.
So Switzerland's a fascinating country, and definitely you made me think about that, about the financial strain, the sanctions.
The sanctions, yeah.
And it has to be from everyone.
But
I'm
it
more
is-
worried about China. If
No.
China and Russia have a conciliant partnership, then it takes a lot away from our sanctions.
It's funny
from the
you should
G7.
mention that, because I was thinking about that, because you're not the first person to mention that. I don't think China's going to help too much, because the last thing China wants is for all American industry to move out of China, which is exactly what they're doing in Russia.
I was most afraid that Putin would have crossed in during the Super Bowl. That's when I was afraid was going to happen. And then the next day, China would go into Taiwan. The longer this draws out, the more the international community sticks together. China, they could be in the same boat. So,
Oh, yes.
So
Very quickly.
I'm hoping the best for China. But China is an expert at the long game. Mm-hmm. And pre-Putin, Ukraine, maybe a year ago, I was more worried about the South China Sea.
Yes.
And how they are building islands.
Yeah.
Just saying, oh, this is our property now. And it's disrupting everything all the way to Indonesia.
Yes.
And that's a threat.
Of course, the other interesting thing that's happened in Ukraine is the convoy. This 60-kilometre long convoy, 45 miles, whatever it is, ground to a halt. Read a great story on the BBC. They are thinking that it's not just fuel issues, fuel delivery issues. It's because they bought a whole load of tyres from China. And it would seem that when you have a military vehicle, which are, of course, incredibly bulky and heavy, you're meant to drive the damn things about once a month, move the tyres around. And all their tyres are coming apart because they've all been parked for over a year.
So all the times that I was deployed in the Marine Corps, whatever port I was in, Southeast Asia, Iraq, whatever, BBC was always a constant to actually get real news.
Totally.
Yeah.
They report the news as the news. Probably one of the last news sources to do so.
What? The United States, they don't do that.
well,
yeah, BBC. I might have grabbed a couple of these little factoids from the BBC because I trust them, and I can't wait to go and check out the Chinese tire
Thing.
Oh yeah, that's and it's fuel, it's morale.
The stories of the Russian troops selling the fuel to the Ukrainians and giving them their rifles, and some of the stories that are coming out, which of course are being totally blacklisted in Russia, are amazing.
I'm a religious guy. I'm not a good Christian, but I'm still a Christian. I'm going to keep praying that somehow either Putin, the only thing in charge of Putin is Putin.
Yes.
And so either one of his oligarchs steps in, becomes the hero, and could put an end to this. Probably worst case scenario, Russia still walks away with those two separatist regions, which is still a moral victory for him.
Right.
I'm hoping that the international community forces them out and it doesn't become a toe-to-toe war. Because I've had a TSSCI clearance, but I'm not read into where we're looking at when it comes to railgun technologies and laser in our ballistic missile defense system. It only takes one or two to get through.
That's
and
right.
We got subsonic bombers in Venezuela, and so I know we're probably tasking an entire battle group to try to intervene with that. But we have an unsecure border to Mexico.
Yeah.
It's not too fast. It's not too far. I'm not sure about the math to take if you're going Mach 2 from Venezuela over the Gulf into Florida. And I've been to Florida a bunch of times. In Miami, Key West is right there. So I'm assuming everyone at Key West Naval Air Station is on Ready 1 right now.
Yeah.
So, and I saw a meme about, Russia wanting to take its original property back. Well, if I recall my pre-European history, that we got a pretty substantial plot of land up in, now called Alaska from Russia. So, and then there's other global factors. For the first time in years, there's open water ports in the Arctic Circle now.
Yes.
And so there's underwater submarine activity. Colorado National Guard actually has units that are going up there and helping with that. So pretty
Really?
impressed. I love our National Guard.
How does our National Guard know anything about the ocean? Anyway.
The Colorado National Guard, you guys should look up Colorado National Guard. They have amazing partnerships with countries in the Balkans, in former Russian, former USSR. Right. And these partnerships, the interoperability exercises are imperative for global security, theater security. And that's what, military units, I've done interoperability exercises in Southeast Asia and South America, partner nations, and it's building that collaboration, it's that trust. Right. Because right now it's proving, the United States, we're not ever going to be perfect, but we're never just going to go and try to take over some country. And that's happening right now. And if it's not for the international community, the solidarity of these individuals and these leaders, and even if people are putting like sunflowers or the little blue and yellow flag on their social media tags, that's just showing support for this country that's still toe-to-toe against the second biggest military in the world. China's lacking, but we gave them a nice access to essential elements that are in Afghanistan that are essential for their nuclear program and their space program.
I think one of the remarkable things that happened, though I am not really that surprised, was that when the UN voted on this about, 2 or 3 days ago, resolution of disagreement with what Russia was doing and all the rest of it, they had 145 countries, the highest ever, voted for this resolution, about Russia.
Yep.
The Russians didn't vote for it for some reason. Do you have any final words?
No, I'm just I'm hoping the folks that are watching this program, it's real, it's happening. This could be the worst part of a really good 1980s Cold War movie, or it could be this great example of solidarity and destroying the divisive nature that we have here, especially in the United States. There's folks that aren't getting bombed right now, and you can walk out and we go downtown Longmont and not have to worry about getting ran over by a tank or getting nuked or getting shelled. And I would hope that all the folks at home don't take for granted for what we have. There's so much that we can do just to raise our kids and do what we can to try to keep them off drugs. Just live happy lives and deal with mental illness and go walk your dog and try to mitigate the next fire. There's so many things that we can do together if we're working together.
Working as a team.
Just like the international community is doing.
Yeah.
So
I'll say this for the international community, they really are doing a wonderful job in working together and proving that it is possible to actually do this. Rex, thank you very much for talking about Russia, Ukraine, giving us a little bit of the history of what Russia, very bad actor in the past. I just feel for the Ukrainians as a people.
Yeah.
I just feel so sorry for them. And I don't have any personal friends there, but I have friends there that I talk to online.
Putin he might have been able to get away with this 20 years ago, but not with social media.
Not with social media.
The SIGINT war is so significant right now. The signals intelligence gathering, disseminating, going back and forth.
Right.
But
I even wonder if Russia has started banning the BBC radio like they used to do back in the 60s and the 70s when they would just literally block with signal jammers everything coming out of the BBC or Voice of America out of Europe.
Yeah. Well, the good thing when they do that, we get a nice point of origin from where that signal's coming. So.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me at the table, talking about Russia, Ukraine, bad actors, very good actors. Thank you.
And if there's any fact checkers in there, if I messed up something, once again, I'm not an expert, but I've studied European history and military history for several years at CU and University of Wisconsin. I'm happy to share a little bit, and I'm hoping folks, go and learn a little bit about geopolitics.
Yes.
It affects us. It's affecting us right now. If you notice, the gas price is going to keep going up because of this mess.
Yeah.
So.
And let's be very honest, it is not Biden's fault.
I think
he does not control gas prices.
Putin's fault. The only person that can control Putin is Putin.
I hope you found this program informative. It's really important to understand that America does not start in Maine and end in San Diego. It's a part of the world. And if I had one criticism about Americans, they don't look at the rest of the world. They are now, though, aren't you? Make sure you do. I'm Nigel Aves, your host, signing off. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Wow.